Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, and for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in London, Ollie Barrett. Ollie, good evening from Delhi.
Good morning from London, Shubhendu. It's 11:30 a.m. here, 12:30 p.m. across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, the US Secretary of State on ties with India, where we've got to with more EU support for Ukraine, and China's economy slows again. First, the headlines.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi hails India's rise as maritime power and a major centre of global trade, inaugurates International Vessel Repairing Centre and a new dry dock in Kochi. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken speaks on India-US partnership at Davos, highlights Modi government policies benefiting people.
A relationship between our countries that is in a new place, at a new level.
9 dead as Arctic blast continues to bring frigid temperatures across United States. 6 states declare emergency. India's Prime Minister inaugurated 3 major infrastructure projects worth more than $482 million, which includes new dry dock at Cochin Shipyard Limited, International Ship Repair Facility and LPG import terminal of Indian Oil Corporation Limited in Kochi. Addressing the gathering, Prime Minister Modi said projects will further strengthen India's efforts towards ensuring accessible and affordable energy for all.
ड्राई डॉक भारत का नेशनल प्राइड है। इसके बनने से यहां बड़े जहाज, बड़े वेसल तो आ ही सकते हैं, साथ ही यहां शिप बिल्डिंग और शिप रिपेयर का काम भी संभव होगा। इससे भारत की विदेशों पर निर्भरता कम होगी और जो पैसा हम विदेश भेजते थे वो देश में ही लगेगा। इसके साथ यहां शिप बिल्डिंग, शिप रिपेयर सेक्टर में नई स्किल्स पैदा होगी।
Prime Minister Modi also said India is re-emerging as a major centre of global trade and the country has started strengthening its maritime power.
पोर्ट, शिपिंग और इनलैंड वाटरवेज के सेक्टर में ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस बढ़ाने के लिए पिछले 10 वर्षों में केंद्र सरकार द्वारा अनेक रिफॉर्म्स किए गए हैं। इससे पोर्ट्स में अधिक इन्वेस्टमेंट आया है और ज्यादा एम्प्लॉयमेंट जनरेट हुआ है। इंडियन सीफेयरर्स, उससे जुड़े जो नियम थे उसमें किए गए रिफॉर्म्स की वजह से पिछले 10 साल में इंडियन सीफेयरर्स की संख्या में 140% की वृद्धि हुई है।
India's Prime Minister also attended Shakti Kendra in charges Sammelan in Kerala's Kochi. Prime Minister stressed that despite opposing circumstances, generations of BJP workers have held the flag high in Kerala.
बीजेपी आज पूरे देश के हर क्षेत्र, हर वर्ग की पार्टी है। बीजेपी ही एकमात्र पार्टी है जिसके पास तेज विकास का ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड भी है और भविष्य का स्पष्ट विजन भी है। ये बीजेपी ही है जो गरीब कल्याण को सर्वोच्च प्राथमिकता देते हुए काम कर रही है। हमने गरीबों को मुफ्त राशन देने वाली योजना शुरू की और अब इसे 5 साल के लिए आगे बढ़ाया है। हमने गरीबों को मुफ्त इलाज की सुविधा दी, गरीबों को पक्के घर दिए, मुफ्त गैस कनेक्शन दिया। ऐसी योजनाओं से गरीबों का जीवन आसान हुआ है।
And Prime Minister Narendra Modi offered prayers at Guruvayur Temple in southern state of Kerala. Prime Minister offered prayers at the sacred Thirupayar Sri Ramaswamy Temple and also fed fish at the temple premises. During his visit, a PM blessed newly wedded couple, daughter of Malayalam actor Suresh Gopi, a former Rajya Sabha member, during his visit to Guruvayur Temple. And Prime Minister Modi visited Guruvayur Temple in southern Indian city of Thrissur this morning. At the temple premises, Prime Minister witnessed a special and unique recitation of Ramayana in Malayalam. And news just coming in, hours after Iran launched airstrikes on targets in Pakistan's Balochistan province, Pakistan has recalled its ambassador from Iran. Pakistan's foreign ministry also announced that Iranian ambassador to Pakistan who is visiting Iran will not be allowed to return. Pakistan has suspended all ongoing and planned high-level visits with Iran in the coming days. Moving on, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has hailed India-U.S. ties during a conversation at Davos. My colleague Ollie Barrett is in London, gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Ollie, what is the latest from Davos?
Well, Shibendu, the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken is there and is describing India as an extraordinary success story. During an interview at the World Economic Forum Annual Meeting 2024, he also said that US President Joe Biden and PM Modi enjoy good relations and that their conversations are wide-ranging.
Remarkable achievements that Prime Minister Modi has achieved, moved forward under his watch that have materially benefited and materially positively affected so many Indian lives. We also see a relationship between our countries that is in a new place, at a new level. And that's been, I think, the very deliberate effort of both Prime Minister and President Biden.
Stuart Smith joins me live now from Brussels for more. And Stuart, we heard those comments from Antony Blinken about the ties with India. What else is on the agenda in Davos today?
Been describing how he believes President Donald Trump's decision in 2018 to illegally end that nuclear deal was a big mistake and deeply unfortunate, leaving the US in a place now where effectively it has no leverage and it does not have the agreement it needs, he says, leaving Iran with a pathway to potentially develop nuclear weapons. We've heard from Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmitry Kuleba, who has dismissed the idea of war fatigue in Ukraine, but indeed still more to come. It's a very important event for the global elite, those at the top of the economic and political world. The UK Foreign Secretary and US Secretary of State Antony Blinken are due to meet to discuss many things, but also likely what next when it comes to the Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen, with military strikes taking place last week. We'll also hear from the chief of the IMF and World Bank on how funding can be leveraged for the renewable energy transition and how the climate and biodiversity can be best protected. And the European Central Bank President, Christine Lagarde, will talk on the state of the global economy.
Stuart, you mentioned those discussions between David Cameron and Antony Blinken, which are sure to include discussions about the Israel-Hamas conflict. What else has been said so far in Davos today about the Middle East?
Well, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has been given his personal emotional reaction to what he calls a gut-wrenching conflict. He is still reiterating his desire to see a pathway to the Palestinian state, and he's asked on all parties to try to help rather than hinder the Palestinian Authority. That's different to Hamas, which is the group which is characterized as a terrorist group in the US and the European Union, which conducted that attack on Israel. He says while Hamas should be destroyed and Israel agrees, he would like to see the Palestinian Authority brought in, because he says without their support and without the help of Israel in helping the Palestinian Authority come to power, there will be no solution here. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has repeated his call for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza and said that's the only way to eventually lead to a sustained peace. He says this is the only way to stem the suffering and prevent a spillover that could send the entire region up in flames.
Stuart Smith in Brussels, thank you. Now, despite opposition from Hungary, EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen says she remains confident that all 27 member states will agree to jointly extend more financial aid to Ukraine. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has threatened to veto the bloc's $54 billion package for Kiev. Von der Leyen's remarks came a day after she met Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos.
The Council has shown the political will to stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes. But we must back this decision with adequate funding. We have proposed to guarantee stable and substantial financing to Ukraine over the next 4 years. These are priorities that we collectively share, and we need this midterm review, and I am confident that we will find a solution by 27, that this is possible.
The Kremlin says Russia is developing its relations with North Korea in all areas, including sensitive ones. This after North Korean Foreign Minister Cho Sun-hui met Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow. Globally isolated due to the conflict in Ukraine, Moscow has been deepening ties with Pyongyang. The US and its allies have accused North Korea of arming Russia against Ukraine. Lee Anderson and Brendan Clark-Smith, two deputy chairs of the UK's ruling Conservative Party, have resigned after voting in favour of an amendment to the government's Rwanda migration plan. They've become the latest senior Conservatives to rebel against Prime Minister Rishi Sunak over the legislation, which seeks to send some asylum seekers who arrive in the UK to Rwanda to process their claims there. Anderson and Clark-Smith say the government's proposed legislation needs strengthening. The government comfortably defeated the amendments on Tuesday. MPs are holding further debate and votes on the issue on Wednesday, including an expected crucial vote on the overall legislation. South Korea has sanctioned 2 individuals, 3 entities and 11 ships linked to North Korea's nuclear and missile programs. The sanctions announcement comes days after North Korea fired a new intermediate-range solid-fuel hypersonic missile, which South Korea and the US strongly condemned as a serious violation of UN Security Council resolutions. Seoul's foreign ministry says the newly blacklisted targets have been involved in illegal energy smuggling at sea. The nuclear envoys of Japan, the United States and South Korea are scheduled to hold talks in Seoul on Thursday. DD India's Andrew Wood reports.
I think it's an important meeting. North Korea and Russia have grown a lot closer since Russia invaded Ukraine. I mean, in a way, it's a bit embarrassing that Russia has had to go to North Korea and ask them to supply missiles and ammunition to use in Ukraine. At the same time, though, it's quite good news for North Korea to be taken seriously in that way. And Russia seems to be quite helpful, or it seems to be prepared to be quite helpful to North Korea in North Korea's ballistic missile, nuclear program and rocket program. And this does raise questions, though, about Russia's, well, sincerity in the United Nations Security Council, because North Korea is banned by many measures from the United Nations, including measures from the United Nations Security Council, of which Russia is a member, from developing nuclear weapons, from firing rockets. And yet it seems to be that Russia is prepared to help North Korea develop its rockets, and even to the extent, as you were saying, possibly even putting a North Korean astronaut on a Russian mission to space. Sanctions haven't worked so far to deter North Korea from developing nuclear weapons and developing rockets and missiles. I think these days sanctions on, well, firstly, I'm amazed that there's anybody left or any organisations left in North Korea for South Korea to sanction. Relations have been getting worse again over the past year. North Korea has now said that it sees South Korea not as a country to be reunited with, to have unification, but as its prime enemy. So I think this is symbolic by South Korea. Don't forget also that there's an election in South Korea later this year. Of course, there's also an election in America, South Korea's main ally. And so it's interesting seeing how the scene is being set for those elections. I doubt very much that whoever wins the South Korean election will want to move closer to North Korea anytime soon.
China's economy continues to slow down amid a worsening property crisis and weak consumer demand. The country's GDP grew 5.2% in the fourth quarter compared to the same period the year before, but it failed to meet a 5.3% target. Analysts also blame mounting local government debt for China's sluggish post-COVID recovery. Some updates on the weather front now, as massive series of winter storms sweep across the United States, killing at least 9 people so far. Almost 80% of the United States is below freezing temperatures, according to detail from the National Weather Service. More than 1,200 flights have been cancelled, 4,700 have been delayed. That has led to an emergency being declared in 6 states: Arkansas, Alabama, Kentucky, Mississippi, New York and Nebraska. Schools also remain shut in many places as winter storms bring whiteout conditions. There are storm warnings in effect for almost 125 million people, with snow on the East Coast as well, affecting places including like Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C. and New York. Certainly not any warmer in Canada either, which is experiencing record-breaking cold due to a polar vortex. Everyday items like toilet paper, eggs, noodles and hot water have become frozen during the extreme icy temperatures in Alberta in Canada. Parts of northern Alberta are forecast to experience extreme cold that will last until later in the week. It's pretty cold here in London.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis, and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world, one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic information.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. During his visit to Iran, India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, held a joint press conference with Iran's Foreign Minister. During the press conference, Jaishankar said both the leaders emphasized the importance of preventing further escalation of violence and hostilities in West Asia.
We also exchanged perspectives and assessments on certain regional and global issues and developments. Both of us are concerned about recent events in West Asia, which some call Middle East, and we emphasized the importance of preventing further escalation of violence and hostilities.
On Wednesday, loaded aid trucks entered Gaza through the Rafah border in the south of the Palestinian enclave, where much of the population is in humanitarian crisis, with food, fuel and medical supplies running low. Qatar and France had brokered a deal between Israel and Islamist group Hamas for medication and humanitarian aid to be delivered to civilians in Gaza in exchange for medication for 45 Israeli captives held by Hamas. Meanwhile, Israel Defense Forces and Shin Bet eliminated the leader of the terrorist infrastructure in the Balata camp in Nablus, Abdullah Abu Shalai, in an airstrike. Shalal, who was killed together with members of the terrorist cell while riding in a vehicle, was said to be planning a major terror attack in the near future at the time of his death. The IDF said the terror squad led by Shalal was responsible for one of the main terrorist infrastructure in Judea and Samaria. Shalal was responsible for a number of attacks carried out in the past year as well, among them the shooting attack in the Shimon Hasdik neighborhood in Jerusalem last April, in which 2 Israeli civilians were injured. In addition, he was responsible for a bomb attack against IDF forces last October, in which 1 soldier was injured. Let's now take a look at other stories making news around the world. Ukrainian circus artists performed dances and juggled for Pope Francis on Wednesday as part of his weekly audience at the Vatican. After his speech, Francis called for prayers for the people affected by conflict in Ukraine, Gaza, Palestinian territories, and Israel. A large group of 24 big transient killer whales were spotted traveling together in waters near Seattle in the US on Tuesday. Big killer whales are different than southern resident killer whales in that they eat marine mammals, whereas the other relies on salmon to survive. And we get you all the buzz which is being generated in the build-up to the consecration ceremony of Ram Temple. Women dressed in traditional Indian attire from head to toe reached Ram Temple in the temple town of Ayodhya ahead of the consecration ceremony on January 22nd. They offered prayers at the temple. The women appeared to be immersed in prayers and were seen dancing to the devotional songs on Lord Ram. In sports, Indian teenager Pragnananda beats reigning world champions Ding Lizen in 4th round clash at the Tata Steel Chess Tournament. With this win, Pragnananda also leapfrogged 5-time world champion Vishwanathan Anand as country's top-ranked chess player in the FIDE's live ratings, with a rating of over 27,748. Vishwanathan Anand is currently at 2,748 points. Pragnananda also became the second Indian after Anand to defeat a reigning world champion in classical chess. And that's all for this edition of DD India Global. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Global. Namaskar.